Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Waddington, and today I'm talking with Giuliana Coto. She's a South Florida startup lawyer and a partner in the law firm of Coto and Waddington, which is my son's law firm. It's a firm that helps entrepreneurs and small business owners build the right way from day one. You're a UM law graduate.
That is correct.
What made you decide to launch your own law firm here in South Florida?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Miami for undergrad and for law school. And while I was at UM for undergrad, I minored in business law. I took all sorts of business law courses and I was really interested in that practice area. And so when I went to law school at UM, I also took more courses on entrepreneurship and startups, and I began to grow great interest in working with founders, especially when it comes to legal. And so in my third year of law school, I was looking around for firms that handled this sort of work, and I noticed that there was sort of a gap in the market. A lot of the firms that did do business law were the bigger firms who, unfortunately, oftentimes are just unattainable for smaller startups and smaller founders who are just starting off and just want some guidance. And so that's really what I wanted to do and who I wanted to work with. And I decided, well, if it's unavailable, why not do it myself? I have some friends who are founders and I noticed some of the issues that they're coming across. And I thought that Alexander and I could help people from day one in their businesses.
So, you're positioned in Miami, in South Florida right now in 2026. It seems like a really great time to come to Miami or start a business in Miami and in South Florida. It seems like it's booming. Is that what you're seeing out there on the streets?
100%. I think Miami is a huge hub for startups and entrepreneurs. I mean, we live in a community where a lot of people will have their corporate jobs, but on the side will be trying to start up their own businesses. And it's really a big community of founders who live here in Miami. So I think this is the place to be if that's what you're trying to do, for sure. And I think now is a good time.
Yeah, you drive down into Miami and there's skyscrapers everywhere, and there are a lot of people moving in that are business owners or people with money that want to try to start a business. It seems like a pretty exciting time.
It is really exciting to be here. I mean, you see founders of all kinds. You see younger founders, older founders, founders who are in the tech space, founders who are more brick and mortar space. So, I mean, there are all sorts of people who are trying to start up small businesses here. So, I think it's a great spot to be in.
I think coming from University of Miami, undergrad in law, really puts you at kind of the heart of that market, because I know a lot of the big business owners and startups are coming out of University of Miami undergrad and business school, the MBA program, the law school.
That's correct. Yeah. So UM has a program called the Launchpad, and the Launchpad basically helps students and alumni of the university who are interested in starting up their own companies by providing them with resources for whether they need an engineer, they'll connect them to students at the engineering school, or if they need a lawyer or legal help, they'll connect them with students in the startup clinic at the law school. If they need help with finance and funding, they'll connect them with students in the business school. And so I think that UM really caters to students and alums who are trying to start up businesses.
Let me ask you this. So I know we have big businesses, ones who have been established for many years or ones with a lot of capital, but it sounds like y'all are kind of focusing in on people that are starting a new small business or big business. Kind of who's your target audience here?
We deal with clients who are at the very, very beginning and are trying to decide, should we file as an LLC or as a corporation. But we also have clients who come in already in the seed stage and are trying to raise some funding, and they need help drafting these documents that will help them get funding. So really, in whatever stage you're in, we can help you. But mainly, we receive a lot of clients who are at just the very beginning, trying to get their entity up and running.
I know that a lot of people that are starting a business, they're on a budget, whether they have a big budget or small budget, they're on a budget and they want to make sure that they're not spending too much money on legal fees or, being taken advantage even with legal
Right,
fees.
right.
But is it really worth it? Does a small business or a startup really need to engage a lawyer to help them with legal documents starting up, or can they kind of just wing it?
So I think that it's very important to start with an attorney from the very beginning. I understand that taking on those legal costs can be daunting, and I know funding can be limited at the very beginning since a lot of startups are self-funded. And that's why our firm offers many flat fee packages. So whether it's for formation or for trademark, we like to offer those flat fees so that there's a clear understanding of what the costs are going to be and expectations are clear. I think that helps a lot of founders whose budgets are more limited. I think it's important to have an attorney by your side from the very beginning. If it's two founders that are coming together to start a business, you need to make sure that if you're opening up an LLC, your operating agreement is drafted. Or if you're filing that corporation, you need to have your stockholder agreement, founders agreements that outline the expectations between the founders and your capital contributions, etc., from the very beginning. I've also noticed that a lot of founders, by the time they come to an attorney, they might not have their entity filed yet, but they already have an agreement that they received from a manufacturer, right? Like, I want to start this company that sells this sort of snack, right? I haven't filed my LLC yet. I need to do that. And I need to do it promptly because I already have an agreement that I received from my manufacturer. And I think it's very important before you even enter into any agreements, you need to make sure that you have them reviewed by an attorney, because once you sign a document, it's very hard to go back on whatever you agreed to or to make any changes. So I think it's very important from the very, very beginning to have an attorney there to help you. I know it can be expensive, and that's why our firm offers those flat fee packages to keep costs low and stay as transparent as possible.
And I know from talking with you, you've had clients who have decided to not retain a lawyer and have entered into different agreements which cost them, in certain cases,
Yeah.
10, 20, $30,000 when it could have
Yeah.
been easily preventable. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about, not about the case specifically or any of those clients, but like what are some of the pitfalls that you can avoid by having a lawyer? Just
Yeah.
review your basic startup documents.
Yeah, I've noticed that a common trend now is that founders and as well as the vendors that they're dealing with will resort to using artificial intelligence to draft agreements because they think that's a great way to save some money. And while in the short term it seems like, yeah, it's a handshake deal. Let's just have AI draft this agreement to have the terms in place before we begin. It can turn into a very unfortunate, very devastating situation in the future if there were terms that weren't fleshed out or things that were missing, expectations that weren't agreed to. Yeah, we've seen situations in which, unfortunately, a founder will enter into an agreement that states things like, we're going to help you create so and so formula, but then there's no schedule, right? So are we going to create this formula in the span of 2 years, 3 years? 4 years, or is there an expectation as to how long will the development of this formula take? And so that can cost you not only money in litigation, but also in terms of lost economic opportunities, right? Because if you're stuck in litigation over this agreement that you entered into, that's time and money wasted, and time and money that could have been spent on developing a product is now spent in court.
You said something a minute ago. You said a handshake deal.
Yeah.
And this is something that I'm a lawyer too, as you know, but after 25 years, I found that when people do handshake deals, it often ends up in fights, especially if you make money. If you don't make any
Yeah.
money, it could end up in a fight. But like if you have a handshake deal with a couple vendors and you all go, let's say you're very successful and you make millions of dollars on your product, I think it's even more important to have those things in writing from the start, because that's when it comes to hurt you the most.
Yeah, I mean, and even a situation like that where you're making millions of dollars and you're working with this manufacturer, and then let's say you find another manufacturer that you want to use. I mean, can you end the agreement? Can you just terminate it? Are there penalties? Do you need to, pay certain percentage of your profits even after you terminate that manufacturing agreement? That's something I've seen. After we end our relationship, you still need to pay me a percentage of profits for, let's say, 6 months, a year. I mean, and that's something that you'll be dragging on. Even if you terminate that agreement, I mean, you might have to still pay that old manufacturer a percentage of your profits, even if they're not still creating your products. And sometimes these agreements will include that. Founders will overlook it, or they just don't understand what the implications of signing a provision of that sort has for the company.
And it seems like a lot of times the person that has been in business, like the manufacturer or a company who's using like a young influencer, for example, to sell their products, those folks have their own lawyers. And often
Yeah.
they're giving someone who doesn't have a lawyer a document, and that person's super excited about signing because they finally got discovered, or they're gonna finally make some money. And in the end, they're at a severe disadvantage because a lot of times those contracts are set up to advantage the side with the lawyer. So if it's a lopsided thing, it seems like it could be a real problem for the person
Yeah.
who doesn't have a lawyer.
Yeah, and I've noticed, unfortunately, many founders, for lack of a better word, can be sort of naive when it comes to that. They think, oh, yeah, I trust this person. Oh, I met this manufacturer through a connection that I have. It's a buddy of a buddy. I trust them. If you're going to sign an agreement, you definitely should have an attorney that's going to read it. They understand the terms of your document and can vouch for your position, because at the end of the day, the manufacturer is looking out for their best interest, not the best interest of the startup on the other side. And so that's why before you sign anything, you need to make sure that you have someone who understands the language, because at the end of the day, these documents are written in a way that's not easily understandable to someone who doesn't necessarily read these agreements or know what the provisions mean. And so if you don't have someone that understands the language and can vouch for your position, you're starting off on the wrong foot for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of young business people or newer business people, they don't understand that you're talking about these documents, but these are legally binding contracts.
That's
And
correct.
so if the contract says something, I mean, you could really be stuck in a position if it ends up in court where you could lose a lot of money. You could even lose the rights to your own product or even to your own name. I've seen that happen where all of a sudden another company owns the rights to everything you worked for because you decided to save a couple $1,000s up front, unfortunately.
Exactly. They might be even operating under the assumption that they own the rights to any IP. And if there's no assignment of that IP, for example, assignment of a formula, then that manufacturer owns it. You don't have any rights to it. And so you paid this amount of money for that formula to jointly develop that formula. And then if it's never assigned to your company and you don't own it, at the end of the day, if you end up in court, I like to tell clients and new founders that an agreement is like the constitution of your relationship. And so when you end up in court because of a contract dispute, the judge is going to look at the four corners of your agreement. And that is the rule of law in that relationship. And if you didn't include a provision in there, then you can't expect a judge to come in and try to enforce something that you didn't write in your agreement.
So when you say the four corners, you're saying that basically if it's not in the document, it doesn't exist. Like this whole handshake thing, it's such a common thing with people say, it's my friend, he sold me his business. And 6 years later, it turns out I don't own the business. He still does, or she still
Yeah.
does.
And then if it's like a he said, she said, it gets very complicated. I mean, we're not going to start talking about the parole evidence rule when it comes to contract law, but there's so many rules and limitations when it comes to trying to bring in outside he said, she said to enforce a document. It's nearly impossible. And that's time and money that you're going to spend battling in court that you could have avoided.
Now, my understanding is that at your firm, you offer, there are big firms you go in and you have to pay a very large retainer to get assigned an associate, but your firm has two people, correct?
That's correct. It's Alexander and I.
Why would having a small firm like yours be an advantage to a startup?
Well, it comes down to the relationship that we can build with the founder. And I also understand the same way that I have a founder coming in and they're trying to build their business. That's what Alexander and I are doing here. A founder might be offering a product or a service, a subscription service. I'm offering a service. And so, in that sense, I can relate to the founder. I understand how they feel as a founder because that's what Alexander and I are. And also, just like the relationship that we can craft with our clients, they can reach out to us whenever. It definitely turned into more of a friendly one-on-one relationship, whereas in a bigger firm you might get more of that corporate feel where your attorney is, you got to go through your paralegal who will then set up an appointment for a month out to speak with your lawyer. I think one of our biggest selling points is just that relationship that we like to build with our clients.
What types of folks do you mainly cater to? Is it businesses that are looking to start, businesses that have anywhere from 20 to 50 people? Who's your ideal client?
Right now, our ideal client are those founders who are just starting. Our goal is to help our clients from the very beginning and grow with them, right? Because I can learn about your business, about your needs, about your goals from the start and grow with you. And I think that's a very, very fulfilling and something that Alexander and I both, want to do is grow with our clients. And so while, of course, we're open to helping businesses who are developed and at a later stage, we also love working with clients who are just at the very beginning.
If I have an idea, let's say I want to make this power bar that has the ultimate protein, no sugar, and I want
Yeah.
to I want to develop a product like that, and I want to take it to market, right?
Mhm.
Would I need to, or would you recommend that I talk to a lawyer about how to proceed with that? In terms of finding a company to develop this product, finding a distributor, building the website. I mean, would I need a lawyer at that point, or would I really have to have the product developed and ready to go?
So I think when Alex and I come in is after you have that, for we'll come in, review your contract, review those agreements, negotiate the terms on your behalf. So while I won't help you find your manufacturer, I will make sure that you have the correct terms and negotiate any deal on your behalf. Also, if you need to trademark something, you want to trademark a logo, or you want to trademark a phrase or the name of your company, that's something that we can help you with as well. And so we can help you when it comes to formation or trademarking, negotiating an agreement, helping you with funding. That's where our services would come in.
So, can you, if we were to retain you as a business person, if I were to retain you, could you negotiate on my behalf with manufacturers and things like that?
So that's something that Alexander and I offer. We offer those services on a retainer. So, like I said, we offer a lot of flat fee options, but for something like negotiating an agreement, we do offer that on retainer. The reason being is because a negotiation can be very short or it can be very long. So, usually, how it goes is I'll send you my retainer. I'll tell you, hey, let's say our retainer is $5,000. We bill at X amount an hour. You would send us that retainer payment. It's held in trust, meaning it's not commingled with our operating funds. It's held separately. As the negotiations go on, we bill against that retainer. And then at the end, if there's any left over of those funds, we issue them back to the client. If the negotiation goes on for much longer and we use up all the funds in the retainer, then it is replenished. But yes, we do negotiate agreements. It could either be the manufacturer sends you your agreement, you send it to us, and then we redline that document, or it can be the inverse. You come to us first, you say, hey, I have a manufacturer, but I want to provide my own manufacturing agreement. So then we would use our manufacturing agreement, and that's the agreement that we would redline with the manufacturer. So whether the founder wants to hand over the first version or the manufacturer wants to hand over that first version, we can negotiate the terms.
So, use the word that lawyers use a lot. It's red line. What does that mean to the listeners?
Yeah, so it literally means on a Word document, you can redline agreements, meaning when you track changes, anything that's changed literally will be scratched off with a red line and the changes are tracked. And so that's how negotiations take place. They're not really done on the phone. I wouldn't be talking to a manufacturer on the phone negotiating the terms. It would really be just adjusting and redrafting that document back and forth. I would send the first version, send it over to the manufacturer. They would track changes, make changes to agreement as they wish. They send it back to me. I can either accept those changes, make further adjustments to those changes, and that's how we would go back and forth on negotiating the terms. That way, everything is in writing and it's consolidated. I think over the phone, people can misunderstand. It's just easier to send those agreements back and forth, track those changes, and know exactly where we stand at the end.
So, when you read a document on behalf of your client, you're looking at it, knowing what their goals are, what's in their best interest. So, when you send documents back, you're making the document as favorable as possible to your client to protect them.
That's correct. The goal is to end up with an agreement that's mutually beneficial to both, because at the end of the day, the founder and the manufacturer are in the business of having a good, happy, healthy relationship to, make money, grow together. And so that's the goal, really, to come to an agreement with a third party that benefits everyone.
Benefits everyone so everybody can make money. That's kind of the goal, right?
That's the goal.
So, looking ahead for the next 5 years, what is your vision for your firm? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years in the Florida local business startup community?
Our goal is to, like I said earlier, is grow with these founders and startups. So our main goal is to become a general counsel to these small startups and advise them from formation and up. That really is the goal, to have a list of our clients who we serve as their GC I love working with young founders and all sorts of entrepreneurs. I mean, we have clients that are in other countries, which is really cool. I think just being in that community and learning about all sorts of ideas that people have and taking part in that is really the goal.
And I have one other question. I know you both are bilingual in Spanish and in English. Being in South Florida, what kind of advantages does that give you as a lawyer for small business owners and startups?
Speaking Spanish here in South Florida is so important. We get calls all the time from Spanish speakers who are trying to start their own company or need help with their existing companies. And I think understanding that language just really furthers one of our goals, which is being accessible. We aim to be accessible not only to those who speak English, but also those who speak Spanish, because our community here in South Florida is made up of English and Spanish speakers. And I think that understanding the language and speaking the language is totally beneficial. And like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of foreigners who are trying to start up businesses here in Florida because they have relationships here in Florida, have family here in Florida, and being able to help them and bridge the gap between US legal system and foreigners is, it's really fun and really great. So I'm really glad that we offer both English and Spanish services.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a great future ahead of you. And this is, again, a great community and a great state to be doing business in at this time. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. We'll be talking again in the future. But for now, I thank you very much. And until next time, I'm Michael Waddington with Giuliana Coto. Thank you.
Thank you.